Hello, and welcome. A friend of mine recently said that it would be fun, that I would be fun to document, that it would be delightful to learn how my brain works. I feel like a lot of people would take that the wrong way, but I found it endearing. Communicating myself is one of my highest priorities. I try to do it through my art, but I can see how it would also be valuable to do it this way, unobscured by metaphor in a way that's easier to understand. Putting myself into words, while impossible to fully do, is something that I can come close to doing if I address the challenge from multiple angles. There are vital core experiences that have shaped me irrevocably. There are philosophies and mantras I hold dear. And there is my capital T, capital S, true self. Something I will never be able to articulate because I myself am constantly in the process of discovering it as it ceaselessly evolves. This challenge, communicating myself to others, is one that I will never be done with. Every time I make art, I try my hand at this challenge. Every time I communicate with someone I hold dear, I try my hand at this challenge. There is no final solution because my true self is always changing. Evolution of self as universal constant. No finite recording of self can communicate the totality of the self. Starting with my core experiences, my mother, my father, my siblings, school and trying to make school work, college, The Void, 2015, and Nick. My mom seems infinitely patient. She puts up with a lot, and sometimes she perhaps involuntarily lets out steam, but there's always mutual apologies and calm discussion to reach an understanding. She taught me how to love art starting at the age of 3, perhaps earlier. My mother is a role model, and I would not be who I am today if not for her. My father is a lot. He is a veteran, and he's had to deal with a lot of difficulty in his life. He understands that it takes a lot of work to break the cycle, and he understands that he made mistakes while raising us that he can atone for, but never fix. He's a sweetheart, and he can be difficult to deal with, but we love him. I love him. I would not be who I am today if not for him. My siblings love me, and that can be bittersweet in times like this when I'm transcribing memories to text. I was really mean to all of my younger siblings when we were young. I bullied all of them, and all of them wouldn't be who they are today if I didn't do that. But I feel forgiveness from them, and I've felt forgiveness for a long time. I would not be who I am today if not for them. School and trying to make it work. I remember one woman calling me an anomaly. Good test scores and near non-existent homework completion in some cases. For a while, I was seeing a behavioral psychologist who gave me an IQ test and gave me a lot of praise, but told me not to get a big head about it, and who gave my mom a spreadsheet and instructed her how to weaponize chores and allowance to train me into obedience like a dog. I got bullied in school. I remember the names of my bullies. I remember what they said, how I reacted, whose class we were in, and how other people reacted. I took every art class that was available, and I made friends there. I passed a history class because I liked a teacher, and I failed a different history class with a 30% F because I didn't like how boring it was. I felt like I had closer friendships with some teachers than I did with most students. I remember so many different adults telling me how important homework is, or how important not doodling on homework is, or how important holding a pencil properly is. So many different people tried to change me in so many different ways. All of them had an effect, but perhaps not in the way they anticipated. I would not be who I am today if not for them. I regret going to college. I made a lot of neat friends, and I took a handful of classes I was interested in, but I have debt now. The college switched to for-profit during my second semester there. This debt is going to hang over my head for a long time, longer than I care to imagine, and the act of thinking about it activates my flight, fight, freeze. I would not be who I am today if I never went to college. The void. I dropped out of college after 3 years. I took all the classes I cared for after 1 year, maybe 2. After I left, there was nothing. There was no structure to my time. I went to bed at obscene hours. I played a lot of video games, and I watched a lot of anime. I think this void is necessary in the lives of all humans because up until the void, the tempo of your life is dictated by outside forces and inertia. During the void, you are fully responsible for yourself in a way you have never been before. I'm sure there's a myriad of ways to deal with the void, and it resurfaces in our lives when we need to be reminded of what it taught us. For me, the void was an existential turning point. The purpose of my existence is defined by me. The purpose of my life is something I define by living. Video games and anime are nice, and I still engage with them, but during my void, I took time to think about my life and myself. I learned about how I operate. I learned how to engineer myself to do what I want myself to do. Without the void, I would not have the conscious depth of self-understanding that I have today. In 2015, I was hospitalized and diagnosed with bipolar 1 disorder. Before the hospitalization, everything was exciting. I coined a phrase, "I am football, we are team," to communicate how I was giving up my right to choose what happened to me in exchange for putting that trust into people that I trusted. Those people decided that I needed to go to a hospital. The hospital was a wholly traumatic experience, and for a long time, perhaps even to this day, I never allowed myself to have that high of a mood again. During my visit, I developed or refined a lot of metaphors that I still use to describe things today. The astronaut, the balloon, the anchor, the deep sea diver, the earth. You'll see a lot of imagery relating to outer space, the earth, or under the ocean present within my artworks. For some things, using a metaphor is more efficient or enlightening than using more literal words. 2015 was and is deeply traumatic, but I would not be anywhere close to who I am today if it never happened. Nick, I love you. After dropping out of college and deciding that student loans were a thing that I decided I'd pretend didn't exist, I cooked up a nomadic, anti-capitalist lifestyle whose germination involved using a lot of heart emojis and winky faces at people in dating apps, searching for someone who had the disposable income for one plane ticket and groceries for an undefined unit of time. Nick said yes, and I've been living with him for almost 2 years now. Life is complicated, but we're very open and we discuss things that arise, and we trust each other, and we are truly a team. I would not be who I am today if not for you. Those core bits convey a lot, but they don't fully describe me, as nothing ever can. I think it's also important to talk about my philosophies, mantras, the little phrases I hold onto, and labels and other words. This section is about all the language and ideas I've collected and keep with me as means to help to define myself, and to others. Existentialism is a philosophy of positivity. It states that the purpose of one's existence is defined by oneself. The classic existentialist texts talk a lot about things like despair and anguish, but talking about these things is necessary for people to be able to navigate the stages of grief they will go through when they accept the fact that the universe is absurd and that they are solely responsible for creating meaning for themselves. Prometheus believes in your infinite potential. This is a phrase that I use a lot. My understanding of Prometheus is that he is a Greek god or whatever, and that he has perfect information of the future. Prometheus knows everything that will be, and due to that, tends to act in a way that is absurd to others. Prometheus gave the gift of fire to humanity and was punished by Zeus to an eternity of being chained to the top of a mountain and having his intestines eaten out by a large bird. Prometheus gave fire to humanity, knowing what would happen to him. He had knowledge of the consequence before he committed the crime, and he chose to do it anyway. Giving fire to humanity is an act of faith, of belief, of trust. When I say that Prometheus believes in your infinite potential, what I'm saying is that despite me not necessarily understanding the whole situation, the potential of humanity is infinitely valuable. As a parenthetical, it's worth noting that I also use this phrase to say goodbye to people who I never want to interact with again. I may not believe in you, garbage human, but Prometheus does, and I hope you find peace in that fact. My labels, my phrases, the little pieces of language by which I describe myself. I'm gender non-binary. I'm gay. I'm autistic. I have ADHD and bipolar 1. I'm an agent of chaos from the positivity dimension. I'm a Cyclops bee from the blossoming tree on the hill where the tugboats roam. I'm a beacon of friendship. I'm an absolutely luminous entity. I'm a tic-tac-toe world champion. I'm a kicker of hornets' nests. I'm just a little creature. My fashion aesthetics are neon toy box, pattern fuck, wallpaper floral, and red square. My self-diagnoses are valid even if they're never clinically affirmed. I have a garbage memory, and I also remember every song I wrote in high school and can perform them for you. Music is more important than anybody cares to acknowledge. Art is more important than anybody cares to acknowledge. Capitalism is a disease. We all just want gay island, queer artist mountain commune, etc. We must imagine Sisyphus happy. Icarus did nothing wrong. Prometheus believes in your infinite potential. Tempo theory. In 2015, I cooked up tempo theory. It is in part based on a few sentences from an article I never read. There exists some person who brings people out of nonverbal, unresponsive states by tapping their chests or whatever at the tempo of their breathing, then slowly increasing the tempo at which they tap. This takes advantage of the fact that people tend to synchronize inhaling and exhaling when they're talking in person. There's so much covered by tempo theory. Your tempo is the rate of your breathing, the beating of your heart, the music you are listening to, the rate at which you notice things, the size of the things that you notice, your mood, the mood of your environment, and a myriad of other things all dancing in polyphonous chaotic rhythm. To understand one's tempo is to control one's mood, to influence one's body, to influence one's environment, and to enact change in innumerable tiny ways. Dogbot Theory. Everyone exists on a dog-to-robot spectrum. Dogs are trainable via following consistent rules over a period of time. Robots are programmable via detailing very specific instructions. My ability to remember things is very much dog. My ability to do things is very much robot. Every aspect of my life and how I operate exists at a different point on the Dogbot spectrum, and keeping that in mind allows me to teach myself new things with understanding, patience, and the correct method for myself to learn. Glass bowl, glass fish. In the mental hospital, there was a room with 3 glass walls and one mostly solid wall that led to a kitchen area that had some windows in its doors. I felt like a glass fish in a glass bowl, transparent on top of transparent, watched on top of watched. Glass bowl, glass fish was born as a method to describe the trauma of being observed, of being an object of observation, but it has also evolved in part into a philosophy of openness. Being open with my feelings has led to infinitely less conflict in my life. Swim. In one of my songs, there's the line, "Swim, written on the fountain of youth. You can live forever if you can compute that you don't really compute at all. We are all trapped in this glass box." There was a fountain in the courtyard of the mental hospital. I picked some flowers and made a little floral arrangement in the fountain, and with one of the stubby little golf pencils they hand out, I wrote "swim" on the fountain. I was feeling like a glass fish in a glass bowl. The fountain is nowhere near big enough to contain me, glass fish, nor me, floral arrangement. The flowers in that fountain are myself, and the flowers in that fountain are the other patients. We are all glass fish in a tiny fountain, in tiny fountains, and we don't really belong there. We deserve more. Just keep swimming, just keep swimming, just keep swimming. Coincidence or destiny? I used to ask this question a lot, but I haven't used it in a while. It's a way of measuring where your audience falls on a spectrum of boring to magical. Boring people believe in coincidences because coincidences are just a normal thing that can statistically happen. Interesting people believe in destiny because that's the more magical explanation of the same event. It's fun to believe in magic, and quite frankly, I think it's enlightening to believe in magic. There exist things beyond the explanation of the slow march of science. There are things that can only be felt via intuition, and intuition is something that you can train to be more reliable and more sensitive. When I say magic is real, it's because it gosh darn is. You're welcome to think that's a weird stance to have and to pass judgment upon me, but know that I will also pass judgment upon you, boring one. Prometheus believes in your infinite potential. Characters. I love to invent characters. Pumpkin, the penguin with the pumpkin head. Poco, the anti-runt of the demon marshmallow tadpole litter. Jack, the masked serpentine dragon who springs from the Jack-in-the-Box. Zenith, the child prodigy wind elemental guardian who has to save the world with Ben, his dragon pal, and Spike, their shapeshifty turtle pal. Oakenfold, the man who hides in the shadows of trees. Hey Game, the god of game theoretical cartoon mischief. Cyclops, the unification of body, jodediah, zenith, Oakenfold, and demon. Seymour, the autistic blobby pal who collects items that other people had discarded and assigns so much meaning to them that they give away little pieces of their soul with each new collected object. Typo, the cute pal with a CRT monitor for a head and emoticons for a face that surfs around on a hovering keyboard. All these characters are pieces of me because what else could they be? They come from my imagination. They reflect their progenitor. The act of fleshing out these characters doubles as character development for my own damn self. Through imaginative growth of characters as symbols, I too grow. Ultimately, I have grown tired of typing out this script I'm reading. Multiple novels dwell within me that I lack the patience to type. If anything here has sparked your interest, or if you'd just like to talk for any reason, do not hesitate to contact me. I go by Jodediah Holmes wherever I want to be found. Feel free to search me up or to contact me via Facebook, YouTube, email, Twitter, etc. I exist to be interacted with. I am game. I am a beacon of friendship. Let's be friends.